Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining this session. We are here this afternoon to hear all about the great work that is happening in our regional Families for Safe Streets chapters. I'm Stephanie Tulowetzke, the Vision Zero Coalition Manager at WABA. I am going to be moderating this panel. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. The way that this will work is, so each of the chapters that are in the region, someone's going to speak for a couple of minutes, just a brief overview of the chapter, some of the things they're working on, excitements, et cetera, et cetera. We'll go through each of those, and then we will switch over to Q&A, some of which are questions that we have come up with, some of which are questions that hopefully y'all will come up with, being the audience. So let's go ahead and I will turn it over to Helaina from DC.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you so much for creating space for us all to present here today together. I was going to go ahead and share my screen just to share a little bit about what. Is it already sharing or no? It says basic. Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay, I guess that seems to be where. Is that up? Okay, great. So DC Families for Safe Streets is a volunteer organization which confronts traffic safety through support and advocacy. With chapters across the country and our chapters regionally that are here today. And like the other chapters here, we kind of have a two-arm approach of support and advocacy. And some of our things that we've done over the last year or so, I'm having trouble advancing. Oh, there we go. Each year we do various events and activities, including but not limited to honoring World Day of Remembrance. And so this is just an example with a visual to attach to that, which is last year's World Day of Remembrance at Union Station, where we had a chalk artist create this really beautiful chalk mural where passerbys could engage in the display, which also included some information about traffic violence and you know, kind of passerbys could walk through Union Station and add messages, and we promoted it through different avenues and tried to get people to show up and participate. And this is what was produced, and it was incredible. It was covered in some local media, Washington Post and some other media outlets, which was exciting to see the word spread and it getting that kind of visibility. And then this year, our World Day of Remembrance was centered around our sign initiative, which we created these signs to honor locations where someone was either killed or seriously injured in a traffic related incident. And it had a QR code that would bring you to this informational kind of page, which you could easily kind of quickly send a message to DC Council. And it had all the language there for you. All you need to do is fill out a few things and then press send. So making it really accessible. And what I love about this and the theme of this year's summit of community engagement, and I'll add the word partnership, community partnerships is exactly how our chapter functions. And I loved how both the last year's World Day of Remembrance and this year's World Day of Remembrance activity really pulled in the passerbys and tried to inform, you know, the average person walking through DC about some of the things that are happening and the importance of this issue and a way to towards advocacy in an easy, accessible way, which is key. It's just another image showing kind of some of the Twitter posts that went out. And it just kind of grew. It went from you know, we didn't know what would happen when we put these signs up across DC, and it just, you know, memorials started forming around the signs, and it was pretty impactful. And then just another thing that we recently were working on was, someone submitted a letter that turned into a real big effort on our end to really craft this letter to submit to DC Council about a specific issue related to traffic violence. And it turned into a meeting with Councilmember Charles Allen, and then he invited us to a roundtable, and it just, one thing led to the next, and it was a really neat process to be a part of. And that just gives you a little sense of kind of what our chapter has been up to. And I think I'll end it there.
Great, thanks so much. Kristy, go ahead.
Stop share, sorry.
Oh, me, Kristy, not the other Kristy. Sorry, there's another Kristy who who is also in the DC chapter, and I'm realizing she is not on here. So I'm Kristy Daphnis. I'm with Montgomery County Families for Safe Streets, and much like the DC and Northern Virginia chapters, we have similar missions. I'm also going to share my screen here. So our mission is really fourfold: to provide support and shared community for families and friends of traffic crash victims, to help share stories of the lives that have been lost in traffic crashes, to convert these stories into effective advocacy efforts, and to prompt changes that would prevent these tragedies from occurring in the future. One of our primary activities that we've taken on over the course of our 2 to 3 years that we've been in existence is to plan roadside memorials for all victims of pedestrian and bicycle crashes or fatal crashes in the Montgomery County area. Here,
hey, Kristy, can you start the slideshow, because it's hard to see the image.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. Let me see how I.
Okay,
just
well,
a slideshow.
Oh, there we go. All right. Here are some. Oh, and it's automatically moving through. Here are some samples of some roadside memorials that we've worked with families to put up. As you can see, there are some areas where we've put up roadside memorials where multiple people have been killed. And I think as these roadside ghost shoes and ghost bike memorials are installed, we're raising awareness both with community members, but also elected officials on how areas where there are issues with safety. The other thing I mentioned was advocacy efforts. We've done a lot of work to plan events. We worked with our council member Glass to plan a safety walk. We planned a rally for families just this past June 3rd in Rockville Town Center, where we have used that opportunity to do that third and fourth part of our mission, to raise awareness, to share stories of those that have been killed in this way. Here's just a picture from our last event on June 3rd. Like the DC chapter, we use chalk as an interactive methodology to pull in community members. Very successful event, and we continue to plan these sorts of efforts. I think COVID has had some impact on the way that we've been able to meet as a group. So our next efforts will really be trying to gather together more family members to create that better sense of community across family members and engaging with the broader community. So that's what we've been up to.
Great. Thanks so much, Kristy. Sonya, if you'd like to go ahead.
Sure. Let me just share my screen here and get us. There we go. So I'm Sonya Breehey, and I'm just going to quickly introduce the Northern Virginia Families for Safe Streets. We are actually 3 different chapters. So NOVA Families for Safe Streets is sort of the umbrella group. And then we have an Alexandria chapter, which was the original one, started in 2017. They have sort of the larger email list here. Arlington started in 2019, and Fairfax County started in 2020. Our mission obviously is similar to others. We strive to bring the community together to create safer streets for people to walk and bike. Each of our chapters are going to give a really quick sort of update on what our chapters are doing. And so these are the folks who are going to speak on behalf of the chapters. And so I'm going to turn them over. I'll probably stop sharing my screen so you don't have to, we can actually see folks. But Patrick, you're up first.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Wise. I'm one of the board members on Alexandria Families for Safe Streets. Mike Doyle is our fearless leader, but he's actually in a different session of this same seminar workshop today. So, we've got some data stuff going on that he's going to be talking about. So I'm here to kind of give a quick update on what we've been doing as Alexandria. So one of the kind of ongoing programs that we've had for a few years now is a partnership with Alexandria City Public Schools, where we do pedestrian education, sometimes shortened to ped ed. So we have reached, I believe, about 1,200 sixth graders this year to go in person and talk to them where they are, at the schools, to teach them practices like stop, look, wave, to make sure that they're safe when they're walking to or from school or walking around their neighborhood, whatever it may be, when they're getting around our streets. So that's been a kind of a continued ongoing thing for us. We've also been keeping up our outreach efforts through things like farmers markets and just the various civic organizations and associations that we use to kind of target outreach to specific groups. So, we hand out our little near miss cards that have a QR code on them to get you to the near miss survey. I think Hung is going to talk about that from Arlington a little bit more of what the survey is doing recently, but that data collection of near miss close calls of crashes. We keep handing out those QR codes so that people can easily access that. We're hoping that they'll do it on their phone, because if you're walking on the street and you see somebody almost get hit by a car, it's easy to pull it up right then and report the details as you remember them, instead of trying to remember that for an hour later when you're back at home. So I think we've let's see, do I have a number here? I think we've handed out something like 800 of those cards. I didn't actually write down the number, which I should have done, but it's fine. And then the other major activity has been advocacy on a number of Alexandria specific things that have been coming up in about the past year. So Alexandria has recently considered expanding no turn on red along Route 1 through Old Town. And so we submitted a letter in support of that. And we were very happy to hear that they're going to adopt that more widely, because we know right on red can be dangerous for pedestrians as well as for people in cars. We've also been pretty intensely involved in the Duke Street in Motion project, which maybe if you're local, you've heard about. Duke Street is a major arterial down on the south side of our city, and they're in the middle of trying to redesign it to make it safer for people, because it's known to be unsafe, and it's also known to be a major headache if you're in a car. So we've been really advocating for the best design option there from a sort of vulnerable road user standpoint. And I think we've done a good job there of leveraging the near miss data and the map that it generates to show that near miss is kind of a major hotspot, is identified as a dangerous roadway in our area. So that gives us kind of a good quantitative point in favor of adopting these redesigns that are really protective of pedestrians. And then on sort of the west end of our city as well, there have been a number of speed limits that have been reduced, and we similarly advocated in favor of that. So we were really happy to hear that a few months ago, I guess about 6 months ago now, those speed limits were all brought down, because we know that speed kills, as everybody knows. So I think that's kind of the major stuff that I had to cover, and I can hand it over to Hung Truong from Arlington Families for Safe Streets.
Thanks, Patrick. Like Patrick mentioned, my name is Hung Truong. I am a board member for Arlington Families for Safe Streets. And we really, this past year, we focused on community engagement and getting our word out there about our organization. So one of the things we did was Alexandria Families for Safe Streets, we also collaborated with schools. In terms of pedestrian education, we reached out to Kenmore Middle School, and we, wanted to pass out materials as well as blinkers, and also get the kids spread the word about safe routes to schools and where to cross and where to not cross, and so on and so forth. We also have kicked kicked up our near-miss flyer distribution. We've created these multilingual flyers, like, very similar to what the Washington chapter is doing, where we post them on like, utility poles and like, crossings at street crossings and such. And we wanted to just get the word out that way, particularly targeting locations where there may be a high number of near misses or previous accidents. And I'll touch on that in a bit. We've also reached out to and are working with the Arlington Chamber of Commerce to spread the word, and they've been able to get us additional number of volunteers to help distribute the flyers, which is great. As a matter of fact, we were able to distribute I think up to 12 flyers in one day in terms of posting them up at key intersections along Columbia Pike this past spring. And we're able to, we revamped our near miss survey as well as dashboard, and I can share my screen and show you what that looks like. Let me just pull it up here. Yeah, so this is kind of like our near miss survey that you can access from your mobile device or computer. And the intent is to kind of like crowdsource data, near miss data, which is, accidents that, kind of like collisions that almost happened, but didn't. And, you're made witness to it. You can contribute by logging it onto the near miss survey. And once it's logged, it gets logged onto this dashboard, which is essentially compiling all of the near misses that has been logged via the survey onto our system. And we're trying to use this data to advocate for more safer streets. We show this data to planners, to city council, to anyone who would, listen and give us the time of day to look at the data. And as of the latest update, we've incorporated VDOT TREDS data, which is actually like crash data that VDOT has recorded to offer a better comparison. For instance, there's this intersection between North Quincy and Wilson Boulevard where you can see our near miss data logged, overlaying the kind of like the VDOT crash data in blue. So I think that kind of combination of community outreach and data analysis we're going to proceed with for the rest of the year. So.
Great, I'll go. Sonya Breehey, I am gonna give a quick update on the Fairfax chapter, which I am on the board of. A lot of what we do is really focused on advocating to VDOT, Fairfax County, and the state legislators for safer street design improvements. For us, VDOT owns the road. It's always this balance of trying to get VDOT to act, getting Fairfax County to act. Is the state going to support, pushing on, all these different players. So really trying to get safer street design improvements, especially along our dangerous arterials, where we're seeing the highest number of fatalities and injuries. Obviously, we want increased funding and implementation, expansion of automated speed enforcement. We did get, we have been able to start pilot program of ASE around schools in Fairfax County. But we'd like to see that expanded. So now it's really about getting that pilot up and running, getting the data so we can make the case for further expansion. We also held a World Day of Remembrance event, which was attended by several elected officials and DOT representatives. It was in Oakton where we had really, not that any fatality is worse than the other. They're all pretty awful. In this case, there were 2 Oakton high school students that were struck and killed on their way home. And overall, last year was just a really bad year for Fairfax County. So it was an opportunity to really sort of bring the electeds together, DOT staff folks, and really honor those victims, but really also have that call to action. In January, we issued a Fairfax County Safe Streets report to bring awareness to that longstanding and increasing risks to the safety of pedestrian, bicyclists, and vulnerable road users. And as I noted, in 2022, Fairfax County saw one of its worst rates of pedestrian fatalities. We lost 32 pedestrians in the county, and 53 additional had serious injuries. So it was a really bad year. Our advocacy and this report was supported by the near miss survey, as was already discussed, with some great analysis from one of our board members who really got into the numbers to really help showcase with graphs and different infographics, what exactly we're seeing here. It was shared with elected officials, as is the near miss data, to really help keep them informed and help sort of urge the needed improvements that we have to have. We're expanding our community outreach efforts with a particular focus on Spanish-speaking communities. As Hung mentioned, we've translated the near miss, the survey in multiple languages. We've also got these card handouts that we've done in Spanish, so that way when we're in the community, we can actually hand them to native Spanish-speaking folks so they too can utilize this. It's really helped with a lot of our efforts in the Culmore community of Fairfax County, which is a predominantly immigrant community that has a lot of Latino community. And so this is where, and it's this area that has a high crash court, or couple of them, that's sort of outsized compared to the some of the other areas in the county. So we're really trying to do some more community outreach there. So been able to participate in some events in Culmore and just trying to get to the folks there. This outreach has also been helped by a growing network of partner organizations. In Culmore and the Bailey's Crossroads, we've been participating in the Kaiser Permanente's place-based initiative, where they bring together a lot of different organizations and community service organizations that serve the Bailey's Crossroads area, trying to work to really just bring our resources together. And so we've been able to tap into that. Also participating in the Coalition for Smarter Growths in CASA's Safe Streets for Bailey's Crossroads campaign, as well as the Fairfax Healthy Communities Network. We developed with the election this year in Virginia and the primaries coming up on Tuesday, we developed a candidate questionnaire and have posted responses related to safe streets, walking and biking on the Fairfax Families for Safe Streets website to really help inform voters about the candidates for supervisor and state delegates positions. And overall, we continue to support neighborhood and school safe streets initiatives in Oakton, as I mentioned, also in Reston and Braddock, Culmore, Richmond Highway Corridor. Concerned parents and residents regularly join our meetings to bring concerns to our attention, and we're really able to share ideas and figure out how we can better support what they're doing locally, because we're kind of all doing the same thing, and it's really trying to tap into how do we work on this locally, and it's really about engaging the communities where they're at and help giving them the resources to do that. So that's the Fairfax chapter, so I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So since everyone has introduced themselves at this point and talked a little bit about the work that their chapter is doing, I will go ahead and move us along into the questions that we prepared in advance. So the first one that I want to ask, also, I guess, kind of includes an acknowledgement. Families for Safe Streets is a unique organization in its aim to engage those who've been directly impacted by traffic violence. As such, I want to open some space for you all to share about what made you want to get involved with Families for Safe Streets. Feel free to be as specific or as vague as you are comfortable with.
I'll go first since I presented first. Maybe we'll go in that order. My full-time job is working at GW Hospital. I run the trauma survivors program there. I work in the trauma department. One of our top 3 mechanisms of injury is traffic-related injury, and we are mandated as a level 1 trauma center to engage in prevention efforts and programming centered around our top 3 mechanisms of injury. And so when I first started my job, I was reaching out to, community organizations that might be doing work in that realm. I reached out to WABA, so it's about 7 years ago or so. And they were in discussion about hosting the very first Vision Zero Summit. And then we quickly partnered with them to do that. And then fast forward to 2019, when there was discussion, or 2018 rather, really 2017, there were discussions about forming the DC chapter for Families for Safe Streets. And I was very excited to join that effort. And then in 2019, we officially launched the chapter. And my interest in being here is really centered around my experience in working with trauma survivors who have been impacted by traffic violence, specifically seriously injured individuals, which one of my passions in life is to create more awareness around what that really looks like, being seriously injured, as opposed to, some of the, people might read in a news article that a person was seriously injured and with non-life-threatening injuries, and then they kind of move on. But what they don't know is the months and years and even, indefinite amount of time that, and some people, a lot of people don't ever fully recover, quote unquote, fully recover. What does that even mean? So that's why I'm here. Thank you
so much. Other thoughts from folks?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. So about 12 years ago, one of my daycare providers was killed in a pedestrian collision. She was crossing Georgia Avenue after as she was returning from her community college class in the evening. And at the time, nothing like Families for Safe Streets really existed. I myself said, I'm in this community and I can't believe that this happens and then nothing. It's just an emptiness. And I wasn't her family member, so I can only imagine being a close family member, a sister, a mother, or a daughter, and having this happen. So I got very involved in traffic safety advocacy work, and throughout Montgomery County. I've served on the countywide pedestrian, bike, and traffic safety advisory committee for many years. I've done a lot of state level advocacy. And when I learned about Families for Safe Streets, I thought we need something like that here in Montgomery County. So I worked with our steering committee to start a chapter.
Great, thank you. Thoughts from the Northern Virginia folks?
Yeah, I can go next. So in my day job, I'm an urban planner. So and also I grew up in the area. My family immigrated here from Vietnam when I was 5, and I grew up in Annandale, Virginia, which isn't really the safest place to walk and bike. So I kind of got a firsthand account of, trying to navigate Little River Turnpike and Braddock Road. And as I, went to school and came back and had a new kind of like lens at looking at these issues, I started to realize that, these problems have been designed, and as such, it can be fixed. And so I found Families for Safe Streets as a way to, spend my off hours advocating for safer streets. And I think a part of that has been, I'm a big runner, and I've been a part of a lot of near misses, and I've been witness to a lot of accidents and near misses as well. So I think that I want to see less and less of that. And, one day I'm hope to see that there are I hope to stop seeing that anymore. So yeah, that's why I do this.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback just off that real quick. I am fortunate to not have been involved in a collision yet. Hopefully that will continue to be the case, although sometimes I wonder when I'm out there running around my bike. But like Hung, I have kind of that personal interest in keeping the streets safe, but I find that the more that I work with this group, I increasingly see the kind of less necessarily physical or tangible health aspects, right? and more of the just like mental health issues of being trapped in your home or not feeling safe, just walking to the grocery store, the different sort of design features that make our cities less welcoming and less accommodating, less accessible, that's not as dramatic or traumatic or, potentially life-threatening as like being struck by a car, but it does have a really big impact on quality of life and mental health and these other aspects that are also still important. So, I kind of think about it in those terms.
Yeah, I would just add, in Fairfax, it was built out as a suburban area, with a lot of big roads for people to drive, and I live in a walkable neighborhood as long as you don't want to go anywhere. And then instantly you realize you've got these major arterials that you have to navigate to get anywhere you might want to go, the library, the school, the stores. I love walking and biking. And then as my daughter started to get older and she wasn't able to ride her bike safely or comfortably to the schools, that was really frustrating to me. And I've always wanted to make changes to that. I have volunteered with FAB, the Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling, and that focused more on bicycling. And so when Families for Safe Streets, when Mike started developing these chapters, it's just such a great opportunity to really focus specifically on making our streets safer, whether you're biking, whether you're walking, but especially when you're walking, because everybody is a pedestrian, right? Or even trying to get to transit or other modes of transportation. So I was really glad that the chapter was started and happy to get involved to hopefully make a change in that. So thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. To your point, I grew up in Fairfax County in Springfield, and I don't think there is a way that I could have safely biked to school. So absolutely. Also disappointing that it's still that way, because I haven't been in high school for a little bit.
Stephanie, can I also just add one thing?
Yeah, please.
I think the other thing that really motivated me personally is just like the lack of equity in some of these fatalities. As I worked in this area for 10 years, what I was finding is when someone who is of a higher socioeconomic status or not an immigrant is killed, there's a huge outcry, and there is a voice there to fix that problem. If it's someone who is not in that part of society, it's just overlooked, and that's the sad reality. And I think our chapter, what we're really trying to do too, is to connect those voices and to make those voices heard and to give a voice where there is none, in a way that is, connecting families directly with some of the advocacy work that we're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. On to another question that I have for you all, unless anyone has any other final thoughts they want to share. Great. I would love to hear a little bit about one success and one challenge that your chapter has faced recently in your work.
I want to piggyback on what Kristy was saying, and I can answer this question. That's why I was like, I can go on and on about some of this stuff, but I'll wait till the next question. I think the frustrating part, for us wanting to get into the communities and really help to elevate the voices of those who are disproportionately experiencing these crashes. And that was something, we've been doing in the Bailey's Crossroads area, in trying to work with community service organizations that are there to get word out, to really engage the residents there so that they can speak up and give them that outlet to demand change. With the Safe Streets for Bailey's campaign, we ultimately had, we had a public meeting that VDOT finally decided to hold, or Fairfax County decided to hold, and there was over 100 people that showed up, demanding changes. And a lot of it was just them venting about what their experience is It was amazing to see that kind of turnout. So what I wanted to, in that sort of whole realm, I already sort of shared some of what we're doing to engage the community, but I guess what I wanted to share was this. We actually have won some successes. We were able to get the speed limit reduced on Route 7 through the Bailey's Crossroads area. I might say I wish it went lower even, but I was glad that that VDOT agreed to lower the speed limit. We also got the speed limit lowered on Route 1 through the Alexandria section of Fairfax County. So this is sort of a good progress we're making. We're making some dent. We're elevating the voices of the folks who are really impacted by these unsafe arterials. We're slowly getting the changes that they deserve and that the community needs. I think some of the challenge that persists is just some of the design changes and you make these you get these incremental wins and you want to be, you want to celebrate or be happy for them, but you kind of know it's not enough. With that speed limit reduction, like we really need education campaigns, trying to get the right people to actually do some driver education so they know to slow down. How do we actually expedite some of the design changes that will really help to slow the folks down? So, I think it's great that we're clearly starting to be heard in these communities, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And I think that's sort of the counterbalance to that.
Kristy, you are on mute.
Sorry, I don't want to talk more than anyone else, but I'll keep my successes and challenges very brief. From a success standpoint, I think our chapter, along with some of our partner organizations like WABA and ACT, the Action Committee for Transit in Montgomery County, have changed the conversation. This is not stuff that people were talking about before. And this goes a little bit beyond the establishment of our chapter, but I would say over the last 5-6 years, the conversation has changed. Another success is that for the last 3 memorials that we've planned as a team, I've had mothers and sisters come to me and say, thank you. Like, it means so much to them that their loved ones are being recognized and are being humanized versus just that headline in the paper or that news story that comes on the 6 o'clock news and is gone the next day. So that to me is the greatest success. And then in terms of challenges, I think we've struggled over the past year to figure out the right balance in how we approach this from a family support aspect versus an advocacy aspect, because we don't want to commit the same sin of saying, oh, well, your loved one died and like, oh, how are we going to advocate for change? And it's like we're right on top of that, right? So we've had a lot of introspection over the past year in thinking about, how do we give family members a chance to heal, a chance to reflect, a chance to come to a place where they want to participate, where they're comfortable participating, and where they can, have this be a good thing for them to help heal their trauma and to help, help them work through some of their grief. So.
Share a little bit. Some of our successes, I would say, also have to do with bringing more attention and elevating the voice of victims. One thing that just comes to mind pretty easily is a recent, I guess it was recent, maybe it was last year almost at this point, but an NPR article came out that featured, I think, 5 seriously injured, and it was a mix of seriously injured individuals and some individuals who had lost a loved one due to traffic violence, and really went into depth on each story. And that's just not something that you see very often. And it was unique and it was refreshing. And it gave me hope that we're going to see more of that. And we have seen more of that. And again, one of my passions is really bringing more attention to what serious injury really looks like, especially when it comes to traffic violence. And that article really did that. So that was a success. And for the people who participated in it, the victims, that was a very meaningful activity to participate in for them, and then for the readers. So it had a really big impact. And then the other thing I was going to say was one of our successes over time has been pulling in the support piece through a partnership between Families for Safe Streets and the local trauma center, which happens to be GW. Well, there's several trauma centers in Washington, DC, actually, which is pretty unique. And so we have a support group that we offer to our trauma patients, and that has been offered to our Families for Safe Streets community. Events that are happening within that group are also offered to the Families for Safe Streets community. As well as a link to one of our co-chairs attends all the national Families for Safe Streets meetings and relays all the offerings that are being offered there in terms of support. There's a journal writing class and different things that people can engage in to kind of facilitate the healing process that you mentioned, Kristy. And so between kind of connecting with some of those partners to be able to offer that support. And then the ultimate support is peer support. So being able to connect people who have experienced something similar is irreplaceable. So when and if we've been able to do that, that's always a success. So that's my piece.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Patrick or Hung, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go. I think one of the things we were able to increase this past year is, like our involvement and our presence within the county. We were able to help the county spread their Vision Zero message and marketing. So through that, we were able to coordinate with county staff. We also had our own World Day of Remembrance, where we were able to get county officials to be present, and we read a list of demands to them for how they could fix that dangerous street where the incident occurred. So I think definitely Arlington County knows who we are now, and I think we will continue to make our presence known. In addition to continuing our advocacy efforts, and I think one of the challenges we've been having to that end is gathering volunteers. So I would definitely appreciate any guidance in terms of recruiting more volunteers. And also to, I think Sonya mentioned, we continue to try and find ways to reach out to communities, with low English proficiency, whether that be through, partnerships with community organizations, or offering kind of like flyers in multiple languages. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and I'll be brief just because I know we got 10 minutes left. I think my regional colleagues did a pretty good job of capturing a lot of the stuff that's kind of happening in Northern Virginia in terms of the successes and where we're still trying to kind of beef up our efforts. I think the one that really sticks out to me is what Hung just said, with the being better about outreach and making a better connection with some of the communities that are, have lower socioeconomic status, that are more diverse, that may have lower English proficiency. I think right now with our near miss data, it's really useful as an advocacy tool, but it's also very limited in that it's harder for us to get data from those locations. And I think we're all quite certain that it's not that those near misses aren't happening there because there's a lot of dangerous road infrastructure in those places. It's that there's just lower reporting because we haven't been as good about getting the message out there and making it accessible to people. So I think that's kind of the big thing that we're hoping to address to make it a really effective advocacy tool to kind of make it more of a tool for equity.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. A question that we got from the audience that it looks like a couple folks have chimed in about in the chat, but that I'd love to lift up to the rest of the panel. Someone asked, let me make sure I have how should Prince William County or any of the other counties in the region that do not yet have a Families for Safe Streets chapter go about establishing a Families for Safe Streets chapter?
So I just shared in the chat the national resource guide for that's put out by our national organization, which was started in New York. They are a chapter that partners with Transportation Alternatives in New York, and they were the first chapter. They've been working to develop new chapters across the country. I'm not sure how many there are now, but they have a resource guide for those looking to start a chapter. Now, if you are already in Montgomery County or Washington, D.C., or Northern Virginia and would like to either participate in one of our chapters or start a chapter that is closely aligned, I think you could reach out to any one of us. I put the Montgomery County information in the chat. I'm sure others could do that as well.
I would also add that I think that others function similarly, but we have a monthly virtual meeting. And I would encourage anyone just starting the process to attend some meetings and kind of get a feel of what things are talked about, the flow and the, you know, that kind of thing. It could be really helpful as a first step.
So it looks like Mike Larkin has a question for the Northern Virginia chapter about your near miss survey and whether it's written by local or state government or if it's written by volunteers. I guess maybe a little more detail on how you administer that might be helpful.
Do you want to take this, song or should I?
I can start, and if I'm missing anything, you can fill it in. I think the way we approached it was we were looking at different fields and questions from that are within VDOT TREDS data, and we kind of like as a group brainstormed different questions we wanted to ask based on that based on the data we want to receive. The reason why we wanted to kind of like have it similar to the TREDS data was that we figured, you know, in the future when this data will be used for data analysis, we wanted to get it as close in alignment to an ANARI official, you know, Virginia VDOT used data set, so that it'll increase the likelihood that gets used. And I'll hand it over to Pat. Yeah, I mean
that's a good summary of it. It was written by us, and it, you know, like Kung said, it's made to align. If you go there and look at it, as I would encourage anyone to go look and bookmark it in case you have a near miss that you want to report, especially if you're in the Northern Virginia area. There's questions about kind of like risk factors, you know, things that we know are designs that put people at risk. So, you know, was it somebody turning left? Was it a right turn on red? You know, was it a failure to yield? There's just kind of all of these different scenarios that pop up pretty frequently with these near misses. So it helps us kind of parse the data and figure out what we can tell decision makers and map it more effectively. But yeah, it was developed by us, not by the state technically.
Great. We are rapidly approaching the end of this session. I wanted to give each of y'all an opportunity to share out any final thoughts y'all have about the work that you do with Families for Safe Streets, where you hope it is going in the future, anything like that. And then I will take like a minute or two at the end just to go over some details about the in-person get-together this evening.
I would encourage any chapter or people thinking of starting a chapter to really consider partnering with your local trauma center. They, as I mentioned earlier, are mandated to engage in injury prevention efforts. And so it ties right into something that they have to do. And I know that in Northern Virginia, I know of Fairfax is interested in engaging in Vision Zero. And so they're Enter Families for Safe Streets.
I guess for myself, I would just like to really thank WABA for their support of our chapter. They've been very helpful in helping us to get a website and have loaned us Stephanie's expertise in helping to organize us, not only within our own chapter, but across chapters. I think it's a really important regional effort. And I just look forward to continuing that partnership and to welcoming more community members and others who are interested in this work into the fold. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just going to sort of add, you know, we're continuing to try to grow our chapters, the organization. So, you know, if folks are interested in getting involved, please reach out, join one of our meetings for the chapters. If you know of organizations that would be great for us to partner with, or them, you know, send them our way. I think that's sort of what we're continuing to try to do, is to build that partnership, build those networks. You know, how do we tap into these communities to have greater impact and to reach the residents where they are? And with that, the near miss survey, you know, if there are outlets where we can share out the near miss survey and getting it into more people's hands, the better. So we're continuing to think about how to really get that out and market it. If you've got ideas, you know, please reach out, let us know. But that's something we're really looking to do, is just to continue to grow the very work that we've been starting out doing, just to have a greater impact overall. So, and thanks so much for this forum to really talk about all of this. I think it's really important and helpful as a region to share this type of information.
Stephanie, I forgot one thing, at least in the Montgomery County chapter. Even if you have not lost a family member or have not been seriously injured yourself, we welcome everyone to participate in these activities. So don't feel weird about it or think, well, I'm not really in that group. I think the more community members that we get involved, considering especially to show that support to those family members and to make this family centered, we welcome everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Just, I guess I would note that, you know, we have a fairly wide reach with our distribution network, and we've got, like Sonya was saying, some good networking existing, but we're always looking to build that out. But we're also, I think, kind of driven by a core of very involved, very interested people. So if you're the type of person who's showing up to an event like this, then you would probably have a really good opportunity to kind of shape the policy or the approach that we're taking to some of these issues. So it's a good group to be involved in if you are interested and want to kind of be part of meaningful discussions about what the organization does rather than just being told what to do. So, and again, thank you to WABA.
Yes, thank you for having us, WABA. Much appreciated.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for participating in this panel. It was great to hear from each of the chapters about what you all have been up to.